Good morning. Welcome to Grassroots in Action Podcast, Voices of the North. I am your host, Darlene Phillips. Today in studio, we have a very special guest, Sheriff Dawanna Witt. I want to say good morning to you, ma'am.
Good morning, and thanks for having me here.
And I also want to take the time to say thank you for coming out, sharing your time with us this morning. So I have several questions for you that I know that may be on the listener's heart. So I would like to know, how long have you been in law enforcement?
Almost 23 years. May will be 23 years for me.
Okay. Was there an event that happened that inspired you to want to go into law enforcement? How did you get here?
And there's a story to that, because I was actually that kid that did not trust nor like law enforcement, and those were because just the experiences I seen with my family. And I come from a very colorful family, let me say, where some of the things that were happening, we invited law enforcement into our lives. But we paid attention to how we were treated too. With that being said, I didn't think I'd be in this field. I used to tell people it was an accident. And the more and more I stayed into this field, I learned that it wasn't an accident. I was exactly where God wanted me to be, and it was my purpose. And literally how I fell into this position or into this profession is I took a tour one day at the Hennepin County Jail, and they talked about how they needed more women, specifically women of color. And I filled out an application because to me, in my mind, that was different from the men and women I'd seen in police cars. So it was like, okay, working in the jail, that's not the same thing. But it was there working at the jail where I started having more interactions with law enforcement, right? Well, now we had to have conversations. Well, I got to know people as individuals. And, that started changing my ideas and my stereotype, because at one point you couldn't tell me any different. You're all bad. Mm-hmm. You're all aren't here to protect and serve me. But after I started having conversations and learning people by individuals, and don't get me wrong, there were people I encountered that had no business being in this field, mm-hmm. but the majority of people I dealt with were like, they good. And then my little highlight went off, and I'm like, I'm going back to school, and I'm going to be a police officer. So it was an accident. It was an accident that became my purpose. I'm right where I need to be, and I'm glad that I'm here in this field.
Okay, so I'm thinking the thought that you had when you went in there to do the tour, where you said you were under the impression that working at the jail would be different than being the police outside on the street. So that brings me to my question, because maybe some people don't even realize, because like some people think squad cars, police cars, didn't matter what it says, y'all are the same group of people. So I would like to know, what is the difference between the sheriff department and the police department?
Okay. So one of the things I want to put out there is not in every state is the sheriff an elected official. But in Minnesota, we are elected officials, so that's why it's sheriff's office and the not sheriff department, because it's office of the sheriff because of the elected position. So when you think about city agencies, those are all agencies within the county. Mm-hmm. They have jurisdiction in their cities. The sheriff's office has jurisdiction in the entire county, but there's also other statutory mandates that fall under the sheriff's office, like we are mandated to patrol the waters. Those are all sheriff's office investigations. We are required to provide primary patrol in cities and townships that do not have their own primary agencies. We are required, and we will always provide mutual aid to the city agencies that, one, don't have the resources that the sheriff's office do, or like what we're dealing with today, where there's staffing shortages everywhere, and we're helping out in Golden Valley, as some people may see. We've had a contract in Brooklyn Center where we've been helping them because they were short on their staffing as well. And there's other cities that are also facing that. So the sheriff's office is kind of like the one-all, do-all. We are where we're needed, but we do have enforcement jurisdiction within the entire county.
Okay, then. Well, that clears that thought up for me. So one of the other questions I have for you, what are your plans to address gun violence issues that we're having in North Minneapolis? And are you creating any kind of task force to work within the areas that need the support? Mm-hmm.
For the sheriff's office, we have a team that's called VOTF, VOTF, Violent Offender Task Force. One of the things that we have been doing and we are continuing to do, and I'm trying to figure out the staffing so we can grow it, is to make sure that we are targeting areas where there is high crime, mainly the gun violence and the drugs too, we should add that, doing a lot of collaborations. You know, our votive unit is a very productive team. You know, we've been pretty good lately. That was one of my initiatives, is to try to make sure that I am showing the public what we're doing more instead of hiding in the background with all the great things that we do. And, you know, if people like follow our Hennepin County Sheriff's page even our Facebook page, where we are posting a lot of those high results with taking multiple guns, large amounts of drugs, the fentanyl crisis that we're going through. But they are targeting those type of crimes that are harming our communities. So, you know, one of the things that we are no stranger to is also staffing issues. I want to grow that team, and be that partner that Minneapolis needs. They're so short, but we have to continue to try to work together so that we can have the most effects. But we also got to do it right and make sure we have the right people doing the jobs.
Absolutely. Do you have any plans to bridge a relationship between the community and the sheriff department?
So I'm smiling because that's my niche right there. You know, again, being that kid who saw things very differently, that's something that's important to me, is making sure that we build those relationships and not being naive to the fact that in order to build relationships, you can't talk about community outreach. We need community engagement, where you're actually out there, you're talking, you're interacting with people, you're accepting people's differences, getting rid of that stereotype because somebody's life is different or they're different means that they're wrong and you're right. You know, I lead by example in that way. You know, I could talk about I want to bring up these two examples because they were really important.
Okay.
Like when there was the vigil going on at North Minneapolis when we had two of our kids who were victims to gun violence. And there was a vigil there, and I went there. And there were a couple of our staff members, because we also have a contract with North Memorial, so we always staff that as well. And the deputies saw me going over there, and they're like, well, you're going over there? And I'm like, yeah, I'm going over there. Well, can we come? And you could see that they were kind of hesitant. And I was like, yeah, come over. And so they did. And you know what? They started mingling with the people there. You have to get rid of those barriers, those stereotypes, and actually be willing to be uncomfortable and have those conversations, again, with people who have different backgrounds, different outlooks. But we can't force it on people to say, trust me because I'm the police.
Right.
You have to earn that trust. You have to earn that respect. And, you know, it was interesting because after they did that and we walked away, and they're like, we're so glad that we did that. You know, and so again, it's leading by example, you know, where those that started those conversations that probably would not have started had they not seen me go over there and mingle in with people, especially at a time where, you know, there's all these ideas about law enforcement. And, you know, so it's like, you know what? We can't expect people to build those relationships for us. We got to do it ourselves. And you have to trust yourself, and you have to be comfortable enough with yourself to know that you're doing the right things all the time. Well, then go share that. There's no reality to thinking because you are somebody who carries a badge and you wear a uniform that's automatic. We got to work for it, and you just have to do it every day.
Yeah, it's like in all fields, the jobs that people hold, you got to be willing to get uncomfortable because sometimes comfortability keeps bringing the same result. So we have to get uncomfortable to make the changes in the community, being willing to step out of self. And I think that takes it back to when you said it's a calling. Yeah. This is what your assignment is. So for people to be able to step out of the uncomfortability, step out and get uncomfortable to make those relationships and connections within the community, because that's what it's going to take. Because I remember, like, a smaller kid see the police were way, hey, but then when you become of age and become aware of things that have been happening, things that transpire due to circumstances, it makes you uneasy. We stop speaking to the officers.
Yes.
We don't even want the whoever the security, we got them lined up as being officers and police when you walk in the store and they speak and you don't speak back because of whatever that is. So just being uncomfortable to make those relationships and build them where the community will also be wanting to maybe get uncomfortable and just speak back. It's only speaking when you walk through the door.
You said that perfectly too, and something I say to officers, deputies all the time, it's like, don't wait for people to come say something to you. You take the initiative and say hi. You know, when you know, people, there are some people where their only experience is, like mine as a kid, it's the only time there was conversations between you and law enforcement was when something bad happened, and so you're always reacting. We got to do a better job of being proactive. And you got to be able to trust the communities that you work in. You have to be willing to build those relationships with the community that you work in. You can't be afraid to engage with the communities that we swore to protect and serve. You have to embed yourself in that. That's not just a job. It can't be just a job. When we talk about a calling, you have to have passion for what you do. And with that comes adversity sometimes. But you know what? When people come to know you, trust you, and respect you, when that adversity comes, they know you and they can speak for you.
That is wonderful. Do you have any plans to work with the groups of violent interrupters that we do have already contracted out through the city? Do you have any plans on connecting with those groups?
I have been connecting with those groups, you know, and some of it's because I've known some of them before they became quote unquote violent interrupters, right? But that they're part of the community. They're our community leaders. We have to. You know, there will be times that for this profession of law enforcement where we can't be the face, right? We need they need to hear from people that they trust in their communities, that have people the community's best interest at hand. And so, you know, you have to get to know your groups. You got to know who the people are, and you have to, again, it's about that relationship. And guess what? It isn't law enforcement doing it by themselves. It isn't the community doing it by themselves. We need to figure out how to do this together. And that's very important. You know, it's interesting because people are talking about communities so much right now. Well, let's really talk about our communities, because it's not all about just law enforcement. You know, how many people do you know out there where neighbors don't even know who their neighbors are, even though they live next to them for 5, 10, 15 years, don't even know them? Or like, you know, I remember at a event that I was at in North Minneapolis, when I talked about things such as our Boys and Girls Clubs, our YMCAs, and right now we have where not everybody in the community are using those community resources. They're going to other places where they think they're going to be more safe or more productive, whether it's sports or things like that. Well, when we do that, we're also losing that sense of community, because now your kids aren't growing up together, your neighbors don't know each other, and I know both of y'all going to know what I'm talking about when, if you messed up, your neighbor knew, and they had full permission from your parents to put you in check, right? We got to really look at this as a holistic deal. Everybody owns the problems that are going on, including law enforcement. I'm not going to say that, no, there isn't that part. But you know what? What I do know, what I do believe to be true, the stronger the community, the less the problems.
Yeah, and I believe that too. I was just having a conversation earlier about that, where the village, where it takes a village, where we used to be able to, if Miss Johnson see you doing something, hey, you know you're not supposed to be doing that, then get in conversation with mom, and when you get home, mom is waiting on you too.
Oh, yeah.
So it takes that community effort. It takes a village to raise a child. Well, it takes a village to raise a community. Some of the things that we're letting turning a blind eye to, or not getting in that uncomfortable space to be able to have that difficult conversation about seeing someone's child doing something, or just building up that energy to be able to speak on things that could help the community move forward. So
can I just add to that too? And our kids, right? Because that's another sensitive spot to me, because we got to put more into what's going on with our juvenile population right now.
Yes, ma'am.
But you know, respect. where, okay, you know, your neighbor can say something to your kid to get them right back on the path. And hey, as a parent, you're not going to be like, don't be talking to my kid like that. You know what? Your kids know better. You better respect your elders. Period. The amount of disrespect, I mean, and we're surprised by what's going on today? No. We need to go back old school. I'm sorry, but the 80s was and the 90s were some good times. I don't know about what y'all think.
Yes, ma'am.
I don't know how old you is, but it was a different time.
Absolutely.
It was a different time. So.
Yeah. Okay. So please tell me, how do you feel about being the first black sheriff and the first female sheriff?
You know, right now I can feel the weight of the world on my shoulders. And that's because, you know what? That's something different, right? Now people are going to say, well, what is she going to do that's going to be different? How is she going to make things better? Or let's be honest, some people are like, oh, how is she going to mess things up? With that being said, I trust me. And I feel comfortable with me, and I know that I'm a person who does not take decisions lightly, especially when I'm making decisions that affect so many people. And I have to be able to trust that, right? And so, you know, there is I know everybody's watching to see what I do. But, you know, I used to be told by my grandma, and I carry this with me now, if people are going to work to take you down, at least make them work for it.
Absolutely.
And so with that, you know, I believe in just leading by example. And, you know, I will say that you can have compassion, you can be empathetic, and you can be in this field and make it all work. You know, and so with me trusting me and know where I stand and know that I am truly in this because I care. Like when people say, what's going on with leadership? What's up with our leaders today? Make sure that your leaders actually care and they don't just treat it as a job. Yes, that means more work, but it's the right thing to do.
I want to take the time out to say congratulations on winning your election to the Sheriff's Department.
Thank you.
So one of the things here at Grassroots in Action that we do is mobilize the community. We educate on voting. Why is it important to get out and vote? We do phone banks. We give out information for people to know what polls are nearest, closest to their house, so they would be able to get out and vote. Can you please tell me, why is it important for people to get out and vote?
You know, it's easy for people to sit back and criticize, but I'm a person to say, don't criticize if you're not doing anything to try to make it change. It doesn't mean you're always going to get results. Why is it important? It's because when we are electing people into office, we are hoping to have the people that have the same values and the standards as we do, as individuals. You know, I never thought about politics, to be honest, or whatever. But one of the things I can say now, that's one of the things I wish I would have followed more. You know, and how can we make sure that the people in our communities are following the politics and not just going with what's comfortable, but also doing the homework, doing the digging to find out who is it that you think has your best interest at heart. And so when we're talking to the community, when we're trying to get people to know the importance of voting, we have to make sure that we're meeting people where they're at, because that phrase means different things to different people, because unfortunately there's people out there that think that their vote does not matter. And you know, and then after certain decisions are made and things like that, and people are complaining like, why that happened, or why is this? Let's do our homework, folks, and don't be afraid to make other people feel uncomfortable, right? Ask those questions. Never be afraid to ask a question.
Right. Okay. If you could go back to your younger self, what kind of encouragement or advice would you give your younger self that maybe as an adult now that you see more clearer? What advice would you give your younger self?
You know, I will say my younger self, especially when I entered this field, there were a lot of times that I said, why am I so different? How come I don't think the way that my peers are thinking? How come I don't react the way? And I was hard on myself because I didn't understand the importance of diversity. And when I say diversity, it's not just the race, it's my background. And I can't help but to wonder if I would have figured that out earlier in my life, that My values, my views, my experiences are something that I should not be ashamed of, but I should put that light on. Where would I be right now? Not to say that I regret where I am now, but I just wish I would have figured that out sooner about myself. Like, there is a value in this, but it was all the experiences that came to me, and me doubting, like, oh, this is the wrong field. I'm glad I didn't listen to that self, that this is the wrong field for me, because if I did, how many people would be in a worse place? Because the one thing that I know is that I've helped so many people throughout my career by being me, staying true to me, and not letting this profession conform me to be just a part of this system.
Are there any kind of burning desires or issues that you would like to address here today that you have going on? Any upcoming events or anything like that?
I wouldn't say events. Like I said, I lead with my heart. This drug crisis, the fentanyl crisis, is really concerning. We are losing people at large amounts to fentanyl, as well as other drugs. The gun violence. What's going on with our juveniles right now. Something that I've been proactive in seeing and different panels that I've been on is that there's a population of kids that we're not even thinking about. And those are the kids that are making these decisions to commit violent crimes. And it may be their first time. They might not be a violent person. But right now, as adults, we are failing our juveniles. And I want to be clear about that. And why is that? We need to have answers right now. If you think about like gang recruitment in the 80s and such, right? Where you have, where you knew people were joining gangs because they were afraid to say no. Guess what? We're dealing with that right now. Some of these crazy acts still in these cars and these chases and the gun violence with our young kids. We are, as adults, need to get this fixed right now. And that's really, I lose sleep over that actually. It's like, because what is the answer? We are not being as aggressive as we need to be with our young people. And then you think about the younger kids, the grade school kids. They're being influenced by all of this that's going on. Our kids are being robbed of their childhood. And we as a community, we as a profession, we as a system need to stop talking about what we can do. And when we're making these plans, which I am all about reform, I do agree with reform, but guess what? We need to do something right now too, because somebody, please tell me, what is the magic number of the number of kids that are committing acts such as murder or victimizing people? What is the magic number? When are our lights going to go off and say, okay, nope, we need to do something right now? Guess what? We can walk and chew gum at the same time. We can plan these reforms and do something right now. We have to keep them safe from themselves. And again, that is that burning desire. I'm like, okay, my mind just can't shut off. I believe I know what we need to do, but I know I can't do it by myself. It's a system deal. We need an answer for right now, and yeah, we also need to work on the reform.
Absolutely. I want to take this time right now to thank you for coming out and sharing your time with us here today. And I think good information was put out for the listeners today. So we want to keep that open door for you to be able to come back.
Thank you.
And again, congratulations on your job. And I pray that God will give you the courage to keep on being who you are, saying the things that need to be said, keeping the uncomfortability up in front of the whole team to where things could change, transpire, and move the community in the right direction. And it takes all of us working together as a team. Community people, mom, dads, youth in the community, the police department, the sheriff department, fire department, every department. We have to come together as a people if we want things to start to change around us. Sitting down, having good conversation, going back and forth, and also putting action to these conversations, because conversations are tough to have, but we do still need to put action to it so we can move the community forward. And that's what the goal is, sitting down, having these podcast conversations, bringing light and awareness to things that are going on and showing the human side of people who may hold the offices, you know, and encouraging people to want to reach out and be a part of a thing. So again, just wanted to say thank you. That will bring us to this conclusion of Voices of the North podcast. Everybody have a wonderful day.
Thank you.